This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Pittsburgh to Scranton, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. I'm joined as usual by my co-host, Maura.
Hello, Charlie.
Maura, have you recovered from the election yet?
Not quite yet.
This was quite a historic election.
It was, in a lot of different ways. So many different ways.
Our camera people told me that you called this in advance. Is that true?
I actually thought Trump was going to win. That is true. That is absolutely true. I really did. I thought the media was missing something, but I wasn't quite sure how.
You need to come and help teach political science.
I didn't have any basis for my
gut
instinct.
There were almost very few, if any, political scientists that I know that expected the results that we had nationally or statewide.
It didn't surprise me at all. I really thought it was going to happen. So I don't. But again, I have no basis for why I believed that. So I'm not going to be a pundit anytime soon.
We have a prophet of state politics with us, and someone who understands state politics better than anyone else, I think. Would you introduce them?
Absolutely. One of my favorite people, Brad Bumsted. It's great to see you. Brad
Thanks for having me.
You're from the LNP Media Group, and you are the newly assigned Harrisburg Bureau Chief. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's great
Congratulations,
news.
Brad.
Yeah, we love having you, and so now you're really official. Yeah.
I am, yeah.
Good.
But it's amazing that you did think that Trump was going to win.
Yeah.
I saw a path where he could win, and I thought it was possible, but I thought it was a long shot.
Right.
I didn't really believe for sure that he would. I wouldn't have bet much.
Well, I think one of the stunning things to me, though, was, and I'm not sure that the two go together, but that Pennsylvania turned red for the first time in 28 years. I think that's the one thing I didn't anticipate.
Right.
Right.
No, I don't think anybody did. But look.
How'd that happen?
Well, because the turnout that Trump got in rural areas west of the Susquehanna was so huge, and the margins that he had were so huge in the counties that he won, and they were narrow in the counties that she won. So that's really part of the reason. But it was a very close race in the state. But look, everybody had this wrong. The pollsters, the national pollsters, local pollsters were all saying, Hillary's going to win, and none of them had it right.
Well, what do you attribute that to? Why do you think the pollsters got it wrong? Because they're basing it on polling. They're asking people. They're saying, who do you support? In a lot of different ways, but they thought they all had it right. What happened?
I really believe that it's that many Trump supporters didn't want to talk to pollsters, and if they did talk to pollsters, they may have lied, white lie, let's call it, to not want to admit that they were supporting Trump, because if someone heard that, even though it's confidential or whatever, they might be criticized for, be tied to some of the things that he's allegedly done.
Well, that's probably
what
a lot of what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of folks tend to look at this, Brad, as an attack on no longer the divide in politics is no longer as much Republican and Democrat as it is establishment and anti-establishment.
That's right.
And many are viewing this as sort of a counterattack on the establishment that's let us down, that our country is failing on many fronts, and they responded by rallying behind a candidate. He may be a flawed candidate, but a candidate that promised perhaps a better outcome, they thought, than the other one.
Yeah, he was the huge agent of change in this election. And Hillary Clinton, because of her background and where she'd worked, and her husband, was really the institutional candidate. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, saw that. That's part of the reason that they supported Trump. But, the amazing thing in Pennsylvania, this was not just a Republican victory. If you look at the Democratic counties in the western part of the state that supported Trump, we were talking earlier about Cambria County, heavily Democratic county, which came in 70% for Trump. So this was almost the old Reagan coalition.
So all those Casey Democrats and Reagan Democrats came out in force. The Democrats who are pro-gun and pro-life.
Yep.
And I heard it said, and there's so much analysis going on right now, that if you want to have a good understanding of what happened, not just what happened in Pennsylvania, but what happened overall, that you look to the rural counties in Pennsylvania where there was 71% turnout, voter turnout. That's phenomenal.
It is.
I mean, it's got to. I don't know how we track over the years in turnout, but it's not 71%. You know, it's a lot lower.
If presidential races might be as high as 40%.
Right.
Typically 25 to 30
Okay,
in
that's
primaries.
what I thought.
Right.
So there's just so much to learn from this election.
And here
Sure
other counties that flipped Brad in this particular election were Erie, Luzerne, Northampton, traditionally voted Democratic. I just thought that that you would be on the edge of your seat throughout this whole evening, looking at these results. I was just speechless.
I was, but when Trump won Ohio, you know, it had been trending in his direction. But to me, when he won Ohio and Florida, I had a sense that it was over, that he was going to win it.
Man.
Now, this is part of Trump was trying to use the traditional Nixon Southern strategy. The Republicans believe that they can keep the South, the Rocky Mountains, the Midwest. They only have to win a handful of industrial states. And that's what the Republican strategy has been ever since 1968. But part of this is changing a little bit because they couldn't hold on to New Mexico. They couldn't hold on to Colorado. They couldn't hold on to Virginia. But yet to come north, to come north and capture Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, this strategy is altering a little bit. What's happening here, Brad?
Again, I think it's just the Trump phenomena that if you talk to people who support him, they would say, look, this is a movement. And there were disaffected voters who hadn't voted before or hadn't voted in a long time. There were labor people who had lost their jobs in, you know, Michigan and places like that. So he really, you know, spanned the whole gamut of supporters, Democrat and Republican, and it's just the disgust with Washington that propelled him. Now, I think also that Obamacare rates went up right before the election. Certainly didn't help Hillary Clinton, and also if you just look at the amount of time that was spent on air talking about her emails, it gave Trump a little bit of a surge, I think, in the final couple of weeks. You know, some momentum. Mm-hmm.
So, did you see anything really remarkable in the state races, the House and Senate in the state?
Well, yes. I mean, only in that. While you have this huge turnout for Trump, and it looks like a red state, you know, for the first time since '88, as you mentioned, and I think that turnout helps Senator Toomey get reelected. But then you go down ballot to the statewide row office races, if you want to call them that, Auditor General and Treasurer and Attorney General, and Democrats won all three. So people were being
first time ever, Brad, right?
No.
They control all three.
No.
Since 68, 69.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
2012, you had three Democrats.
Okay. But at this time, it seemed that the Democratic candidates were more experienced. They raised, I thought, more money. They waged more effective campaigns.
Yeah.
Where did Otto Voigt come from? Where did Mr. Brown come from? They're good people, but they weren't known commodities in state politics. Is that fair to say?
I think it is fair to say, and it's pretty hard if you're going up against somebody with access to campaign money, or if it's Josh Shapiro with track record in Montgomery County as a pretty effective county commission chairman there, and has the ability to raise money. So we'll see. But I think where you split off and had the three Democratic row officers, and then you go to the legislature where it increases the Republican margins for the Senate and the House, that's pretty surprising too, on top of all of that.
Well, clearly Pennsylvanians were thinking through their votes.
They were.
They could not have just been pushing one button for this election, or it wouldn't have turned out this way.
Right. Although when people vote, I don't think they think when they vote for a legislator, oh, this will give us a veto-proof majority in the Senate. No, it's just their local guy that they like.
Absolutely.
You know, but that is in fact what happened, where you wind up with 30 to 34 seats in the Republican Senate that the Senate controls, and up to 122 in the House. So you've got these much bigger majorities.
122 out of 203.
Right.
And
34 out of 50.
Yeah.
Right. And a Democratic governor who had his hands full, you know, the past 2 years with the Republicans, and now they'll be emboldened.
Right. Well, the governor has said that he is not concerned about this because he's already had to work with the Republican House and the Senate.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll get any of his initiatives through?
I think that he already did this past year, that there were some things that went through.
Successes,
the first year, was a disaster for everybody, for the legislature, for the governor, with the extended budget dispute and all of that. But last year, everybody was, the Republicans were focused on, getting some things through for the election, and they did genuinely try to work together, I believe. But now we're back to square one, heading into the next cycle, because there's no election year for most of the legislature this coming year, and Wolf's only 2 years away from running for re-election if he wants to. So I think you could see some more testy relations and more partisanship this year than last year.
And late budgets, maybe?
And maybe.
Brad, tell us about the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history for the U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania, the McGuinty-Toomey race. Could you give us your thoughts on that?
Well, sure. I think I've heard a number of people say with Pat Toomey that they voted for him. I mean, Penn Live endorsed him. And, they tend to support some, Democratic candidates, liberal candidates. But people always mention the fact that he was willing to work with Democrats in the Senate on some kind of reasonable gun control issue. Nothing dramatic, but just, work with them a little bit. And I think that really helped. McGuinty was uphill against an incumbent anyway, and then when you add the Trump layer to all of this, it's hard. The ads in this were just, brutal on both sides. I've never seen anything quite like it. And
I think when we saw you last, we said that there seemed to be a sense that the only way McGuinty was going to win was if Hillary held the state by 6 points.
Yes.
And it didn't.
Well,
there was
close.
no way.
No.
It wasn't even close. It went completely opposite direction. So
no, and Trump only won it by 1.3%, I believe, is the final figure.
Very close, yeah.
It's just very, very difficult for anyone like McGuinty, who'd run for governor in a Democratic primary a couple years ago, but that's all the real electoral experience she had out there. Experienced otherwise in government, but not for that.
It's unfortunate now that we're seeing some rioting over the selection of our new president, and it's very sad to see that because we just have an electoral system that's been with us forever. What do you think it's going to take to bring everybody back together? Any idea?
I don't know. It's a great question. I mean, I think that Trump tried to, in his initial remarks, pave the way for that, and so did Hillary Clinton. But there are people out there who just will say, and I saw stuff on Facebook, he's not my president,
right?
Because of the distrust for him. It's very disconcerting, and it's dangerous. I never listened to the Glenn Beck show, but I just happened to have it on this morning, and they had a clip of a Latino woman who was at one of these protests, and she just said, that we're going to have to fight, and there need to be deaths. And that's one person, who knows, but if it's, it's just scary to hear that sort of thing.
This is something that I've seen in the university level for some time now, the death of political tolerance in many portions of America, and it's something I guess we have to rebuild. How do we, in the last 15 seconds, 30 seconds, how do we rebuild political tolerance in Pennsylvania and in the nation, Brad?
It's a great question. It's almost beyond my area, and it's more in your realm as a political scientist. I'm not sure how we do that. It's gone so far down that path of political correctness and what you can say and what you can't say, and the bad feelings from this race. I hate to say it, but I don't know.
I have one last really quick question for you. Your new book
and
your prediction. Do you think we'll have a corruption-free 2017?
No.
Okay, in our legislature, in Pennsylvania?
Well, I don't know about in the legislature, but in Pennsylvania, no. I think there are pending cases out there with people who have cooperated with the federal government and wore wires that it's very likely that we might see.
And the name of your book?
The name of the book is Keystone.
Number 2?
Yeah, it is Keystone Corruption Continues.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we would call Volume 3 if it gets around to that.
Oh, that's great. Well, everybody should read both books.
This gives us a theme for Brad's next appearance. Keystone Corruption Continues. We'll see you right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The Pennsylvania Chamber serves as the frontline advocate for business on Pennsylvania's Capitol Hill by influencing the legislative, regulatory, and judicial branches of state government. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States, and by Blackford Ventures, LLC, a private equity firm seeking to make significant investments in real estate, proven business enterprises, and their leaders. Find out more at www.blackfordventures.com. And by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment, Maura and I are joined by a guest who has graced this table before, Paul Addis, who is a retired energy executive and has a lot of great thoughts on many public issues facing the Commonwealth. Paul, may I ask you if you'd sort of reintroduce yourself to our viewers today?
Be glad to. First and foremost, I am happily married for 38 years, or about to be 38 years, and have four...
Congratulations.
Thank you. Four adult, wonderful children who luckily are all gainfully employed.
Always good.
Yeah,
Nobody in the basement.
that's correct.
A blessing.
A blessing. Yes, I am a retired business executive. I spent a number of years in the commodity business, most of those years in the energy sector for two companies principally. Most recently, I was the co-chairman and CEO of a large private company called Louis Dreyfus Highbridge, which was involved in the natural gas pipeline business, the natural gas liquids business, the trading of energy products to include electricity. And prior to that, I spent a number of years with a public company called American Electric Power, which is one of the United States' largest electric utilities, where I ran the wholesale business, the power plants, coal mines, transportation assets, and a very, very large trading business.
Wow.
So,
You've been busy.
well, I was busy in that arena, and I do a fair amount of volunteer work today with my wife.
That's great. Well, we can't help but start today, like we've started everything, talking about the election. Unprecedented, shocking, and there's a whole bunch of words we can use for it. I think you've said in the past that you would not and did not support Donald Trump. And can you give us some of your thoughts on how you feel about that today, post-election, and if he were to ask you for some advice on his new administration, what would you tell him?
Well, that is absolutely correct that I did not support Mr. Trump. I didn't think he had the appropriate attributes, character to serve as President of the United States. Having said that, Mr. Trump enunciated, he caught the pulse of a number of very important issues which many, many Americans have felt troubled by, which has, frankly, in my view, has become a movement. That being a lack of high-paying, good-paying jobs, an immigration system which doesn't seem either fair or rational, unfair trade practices on a global basis, the lack of growth in America, our infrastructure, which to appearances, to seeing it, doesn't look like it's first world. So he caught those, they became a movement. He will now be our president, and I can only hope that he will be a successful president. As to if he asked me what I think or what his policy agenda would be, it would be comprehensive. I believe all the issues we face are interconnected. What would I recommend? Well, first I would recommend looking back to what has made America what we are in the world, the most powerful nation in the world, and frankly, the most successful over the last several hundred years. We are a nation of laws, and laws are essential to a growing economy, that businesses feel comfortable, that they understand the rules of the game. So a legal system which is clear and precise. 2, understanding that this country has been built on freedom, free expression, protecting the weak, helping the weak in many ways, and maybe most important of all, understanding that a competitive market allows individuals to both succeed and reach to their fullest potential, and it also allows for failure of individuals and companies. And failure teaches us lessons and allows new growth to emerge, whether it's in a forest or in a competitive business environment. As to specifics, I think we need, which Mr. Trump has spoken about, we need to clarify and streamline our regulatory environment. There's not a business executive I know, to include myself, who wasn't interested in knowing how quickly can I have approval for this project. If things take too long, I look for alternatives. Capital, the money one spends in large pools of money, needs to understand the potential return, and if things take years to get approved, the environment changes. So we need a streamlined regulatory environment. Second, we need to improve the tax code. It is a fact that our corporate and business taxes are some of the highest in the world. We compete in a global economy. We need to bring those rates down so we can compete in that global economy. That's just basic common sense. We need to think about our infrastructure, but when we think about our infrastructure, in my view, that we need to put structures in place that encourage investment in areas that are the job of the federal government, not local government or state government. So the federal government should be spending monies in areas that are the purview or responsibility of the federal government. And second, we can't have a system which whoever speaks the loudest or has the most influence drives where those investments go. They need to go where there's a high return on investment or it's in the public interest. We can't afford to make investments in areas around politics. We need to get rid of business crony capitalism, where those who have the most influence get special benefits, part of fixing the tax code. So those are just a few of those areas. But if I was being innovative and thinking, those are common sense practices, a couple of innovative ideas that I would add. If one looks at the statistics, very few people have the wherewithal in those lower paying jobs to move to where jobs are. I would contemplate and think about relocation allowances, which might be paid back, but a relocation allowance system to allow people who don't have the money to move to where jobs or higher paying jobs exist. I would think about apprenticeship programs, both large and small, with big business and small business. It would save money at the K through 12 level and target training done by corporations, businesses, to help people find technical jobs that businesses are crying about that they can't find people.
It's funny, Paul, because I thought of you the other day when you've talked extensively about the changing nature of our economy, and I saw a statistic the other day that just haunted me, and that was that there was something like 9.5 million people more work for government in the United States than are involved in manufacturing. And I thought of you and thought that if someone would have a solution to that you would. But I want to shift gears here for a moment. How do you assess the effectiveness of the Affordable Care Act?
Or lack of effectiveness.
Yes, or the lack of effectiveness of Obamacare. This is something, of course, that has been a major topic during this presidential race. And do you believe that our federal and state governments should be involved in providing or subsidizing health insurance? And if so, how, Paul?
Well, in answer to your question, no, I don't believe it has been fundamentally a workable or sustainable program. And I stress the word sustainable. The the essential problem with health care, which a number of policymakers, presidents have looked at for a long period of time. Obviously, Medicare and Medicaid go back a number of decades. But in the recent past has been affordability. The issue is affordability. Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, did nothing to deal with that issue. What it did was create large subsidy structures to help those who couldn't afford insurance, but paid for on the backs of middle class people to pay for insurance for others. So we have 12 or 13 million people who have insurance now, give or take, via Obamacare, 5% or so of our population. But the cost has been extraordinary. This year in 2017, the reports are that insurance rates in Pennsylvania will go up 35 to 40%.
Mine did.
A system, and I hear healthcare advocates or Obamacare advocates suggest, well, that's simple to resolve. All we need to do is increase the subsidies. Well, a system built on ever-growing subsidies is not one that is sustainable. There is only
a system that's built on a marketplace of providers who are pulling out too. I mean, you can't. It's imploding on itself right now.
Well, one of the other things we've done is the word insurance really doesn't work for what we have, because insurance is built on analyzing risk, and we now have a system where insurers have only two criteria that they're allowed to use as they offer insurance: age, where even the age analysis was not done relative to the true cost, because we wanted to lower the cost for seniors versus young people. So even that was not done relative to the empirical facts of insurance, and to obviously smoking, but all other factors were taken out. I would have the federal government offer catastrophic insurance to cover all Americans, some who are born with the most unfortunate medical conditions, or those who have terrible diseases. And I would drive competition by allowing insurance to be sold across state lines. I would increase the supply of nurse practitioners, physician's assistant, to increase supply, and I would drive for price discovery in medicine, so that individuals could begin to shop and we could drive towards a competitive marketplace.
Okay, thank you, Paul. It was so nice to have you back again, and we hope to continue this discussion in the near future. We will see you again next time on Behind the Headlines. Check us out on Facebook, and check us out on the voiceofpa.net. We'll see you again next time.